Okay, today we are going on a journey into one of the most terrifying, most influential, and honestly, most misunderstood places ever put to paper the hell from Dante Alighieri's Inferno. You've definitely heard some version of this idea before, right? This concept of a super organized, multi level hell where every punishment perfectly fits the crime. It's everywhere in our culture. You see it in movies, you see it in video games. It's just part of how we think. But have you ever stopped to ask where that detailed map of damnation actually came from? Now, if you're thinking it's straight out of the Bible, that's a super common thought, but it's actually wrong. The Bible definitely talks about hell for sure, but it never gives us this kind of circle by circle travel guide breakdown. So where did it come from? Get this, our entire modern vision of hell comes from one man's epic poem written over 700 years ago. And it is so much more than just a religious text. It's part political burn book, part deep philosophical dive, and, believe it or not, at its very core, it's a story about unrequited love. All right, let's get into it. To really understand the Inferno, you first have to understand the man who wrote it. You have to understand Dante and the midlife crisis that basically kicked off this entire epic journey. So the poem opens, and our main character, who is Dante himself, is totally lost. He's 35, halfway along our life's path, and he wakes up in this dark, terrifying forest. It's a symbol for his own sin, his own confusion. He sees a sunlit mountain in the distance. That's salvation. And he tries to climb it, but three scary beasts get in his way. Just when he thinks it's all over, a guide shows up. And his rescuer is none other than the ghost of the great Roman poet Virgil. Now, Virgil here, he represents human reason, all the logic, philosophy, and art that humanity can achieve. He tells Dante he can guide him through hell, but he also reveals he was sent by someone else, a woman named Beatrice. And she represents divine grace, and as we'll find out, she is the real reason for this entire journey. So, with Virgil as his guide, Dante is about to start his descent. He's not just going to learn about sin as some abstract idea. He's about to see it and smell it and feel it for what it truly is. This is it. This is the inscription carved over the gates of hell. It's a bone-chilling warning that once you're in, there's no getting out. This isn't a place you go to get better. It's a place of permanent, unchangeable, eternal justice. So what does this place actually look like? Well, Dante imagines hell as this massive, cone-shaped pit that goes all the way to the center of the earth, and it's divided into 9 circles. The deeper you go, the worse the sin gets and the more terrifying the punishment becomes. And it's not random. There's a moral hierarchy here. The sins near the top are sins of, losing control. Think lust, gluttony. But the sins at the bottom, those are sins of malice, violence, fraud, and treachery. Sins that take real thought and real evil intent. Okay, now this is where the absolute genius of the Inferno really starts to shine through. The punishments in this place aren't just random torture. No, they are all governed by a very precise and fascinating moral logic. And that logic has a name, contrapasso. It basically translates to suffer the opposite or counter-suffering. The idea is that in Dante's hell, the punishment has to fit the crime, but in this really symbolic, often ironic way. The punishment itself is designed to show you the true nature of the sin. Let's look at a classic example. The second circle is for the lustful. In life, these souls were just swept away by their passions, right? So in hell, they are forever swept around by a violent hurricane-like wind. They can never find peace, never find rest, just like they couldn't in life. This is actually where Dante meets the famous lovers Paolo and Francesca, and their story is so heartbreaking he literally faints from pity. Or how about the third circle for the gluttonous? These are the souls who spent their lives just overindulging, making themselves nothing more than, consuming machines. So their contrapasso is to lie for all eternity in this disgusting, freezing slush of garbage while a 3-headed dog, Cerberus, rips them apart. You see, it brilliantly shows how the punishment strips away all the pleasure of the sin and just reveals its ugly, empty core. So who exactly does Dante meet on this trip? Well, this is where the whole thing gets incredibly personal. See, Dante was a big deal in the politics of his city, Florence, and he was exiled under circumstances he felt were totally corrupt. So, he used the Inferno to get the ultimate revenge. He fills the circles of hell with his actual political enemies, with crooked politicians from his hometown, and even with popes he thought were sinful, like Pope Boniface VIII. It is, without a doubt, history's most epic burn book. But the Inferno isn't just about punishment and political payback. Let's go back to Beatrice. Remember her? The woman who sent Virgil to save Dante in the first place? Who was she really? And why was she the engine driving this entire cosmic adventure? So in real life, Beatrice Portinari was a woman Dante barely knew. Seriously, he met her when they were both 9 years old, saw her just one more time 9 years later, and that was pretty much it. She went on to marry another man and then died tragically young, at just 25. But for Dante, she became this perfect ideal, a symbol of divine grace and beauty. And this is the key. In the poem, Beatrice isn't just some long-lost love. She is the embodiment of divine truth. See, Virgil, who represents human reason, can only take Dante so far. Reason gets you through hell, it gets you through understanding sin. But to get to heaven, to actually understand God, Dante needs more. He needs grace. He needs Beatrice. She's the one who's going to be his guide through paradise. So, after all of this horror, after all the political score settling and the philosophical deep dives, what is the ultimate point of the Inferno? The answer, funnily enough, is at the very bottom, in the poem's absolutely incredible and totally surprising conclusion. Just think for a second. What would you guess is the worst possible sin? Murder, maybe? Worshipping false gods? Violence? Well, according to Dante, all of those are wrong. The deepest, darkest, coldest part of hell is saved for something else entirely. At the very center of the universe, Dante finds Satan. But he's not some fiery king sitting on a throne. He's this grotesque, three-faced monster, trapped up to his waist in a frozen lake, weeping bloody tears from his 6 eyes. And his 3 mouths are eternally chewing on history's 3 greatest traitors, Brutus and Cassius, who betrayed their leader Julius Caesar, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed Christ. For Dante, the worst sin isn't violence. It isn't greed. It's treachery, the malicious abuse of trust, the absolute corruption of love. And here is the final, mind-blowing twist. After everything we've just been through, the Inferno isn't the whole story. It's not even half the story. It's just the first third. The entire poem, the Divine Comedy, is 100 chapters long. The Inferno is just the first step on a much bigger journey, from damnation up through purgatory and finally into paradise. So why do we still care about this 700-year-old poem so much? Because it did way more than just tell a story. It literally created our visual language for hell. It took complicated theology and turned it into this incredibly human story about being lost and finding your way home. And by writing it in his local dialect instead of fancy Latin, Dante basically created the modern Italian language. Pretty incredible. And that kind of brings us to a final thought. The Inferno was a moral map of Dante's world. It was a reflection of what he saw as the greatest evils of his time, which leaves us with a really fascinating question. If he were writing it today, what sins would he focus on? And who would he put in that deepest, coldest circle of hell? It's a question that tells us just as much about ourselves as it does about Dante. Definitely something to think about.